Hi guys, just thought I'd quickly run through one that we just quickly diagnosed and knocked over this afternoon. And it's a bit of an interesting one, as in it's easy enough for anyone to do. So customer's vehicle, had trouble with the vehicle. It's a Holden Cruze, sorry, I'll start with that. Holden Cruze 2013-14, 1.6 turbo. So it's not the 1.4, it's the 1.6 turbo. Hunting at idle, randomly stalling, sort of going 500,000 revs and stalling, and all sorts of bits and pieces going on. And the customer had been chasing a barometric pressure sensor code in the vehicle. So they've gone and they've done a couple of common things like the rocker cover, which is PCV valves common in these, and a couple other things. They've replaced what they thought was the barometric pressure sensor. They've replaced the boost pressure sensor. They've replaced the MAF sensor, and they were still getting issues. So the vehicle got dropped off to us today, and we brought it in. The first thing we did was scan it straight up. That's the first thing we're going to do. And this is what we got when we scanned it. So we got two MAP sensor codes and an intake code. So we never got a barometric pressure sensor code. So the first thing we went looking at was the MAP sensor. Now, in these vehicles, which I will show you, there's a MAP sensor, there's a boost sensor, there's a MAF sensor, and there's a baro sensor. Not all vehicles have all four. Some will have them 2-in-1, etc. So there is 4 sensors in it. Now, when we had a look, and I will move the phone and I'll show you in a minute, when we had a look at the MAP sensor, we could see it's just a little bit loose in the housing. So we wanted to make sure that it wasn't leaking air around it to rule out other things. The first thing we did was smoke test the vehicle. Smoke test came back fine. No issues there with the smoke test. Then we put the scan tool back on and we looked at live data. And the first thing we noticed was the MAP sensor was pinged full round at 240. Now, it shouldn't be that. So it should probably be 20 to 40 at idle, and it should drop to 0 with key off, etc. Key off, stayed at 240. So we knew there was an issue there. Unplugged the sensor, went to 0. So that was a new sensor the customer had put into the MAP sensor, but it was throwing a false reading, essentially, okay? So that's what we had there. Now, I'll grab the phone off the stand and I'll take you and show you a couple of things. Okay guys, so we're looking at the engine bay now, and we're gonna run through some of the sensors and what they are. So this is your MAF sensor, which is your mass airflow sensor. Registers the air coming in. This is your boost pressure sensor on the pipe coming before the throttle body. This is your MAP sensor, MAP. And down, you're not going to see it real well, guys, but let's try and zoom in. Down under here, right there, is your baro sensor, barometric pressure sensor. So what had happened is the customer has replaced all these, and we're still getting the baro fault. They've put in a sensor here, which they thought was a barometric pressure sensor, and they were still getting a baro fault, and then they were getting MAP sensor faults. Couldn't see any other sensors, so come to us for us to have a look at it. Now, this is an easy enough issue that anyone could have had because A, that sensor's hard to know that it's there. B, there's a bigger problem with these sensors. If you go to your local parts store to buy one of these sensors, you could very much end up in the same situation. So that right there is the baro sensor. So that's the barometric pressure sensor. That is the MAP sensor. Exact same on the outside, same connector, same amount of pins, everything looks the exact same. But it is not the same. That sensor there, as I said, that's a barometric pressure sensor. That's the MAP sensor. All looks the same connector, same pins, everything. But the resistance, the internal resistance and the way they work is different. So what actually happened in this case is the customer's gone in and brought a baro sensor, and they've looked and they've gone, oh yeah, yep, that goes there. Pulled that out, plugged that in. Nah, hasn't fixed it. But what the actual issue is, this sensor is meant to go down there, and then the MAP sensor was meant to stay in there. So what made us look at that is the live data reading the way it was. Even though a sensor is new, especially past these days, you can't rule out a faulty sensor or a faulty part or wiring and stuff like that. So that's why the first thing we did was look at that. we nailed this in about an hour. So we're pretty quick on it. We knew where to look. But yeah, it's something to be careful of. The map sensor and the barrow sensor in these 1.6 is the exact same sensor to physically look at it, but they are different part numbers because they do have different internal resistances. So this, I spoke to the guy of this one, he's a good fella, comes in here a bit. He spent like 50 plus hours on this car chasing this problem. So having the right tool and being able to look at that information is what pointed us in that direction. And as soon as we seen that and did some research in regards to part numbers and stuff like that in some of our systems, like, this is what's going on, and measured the resistance and stuff like that. So something to be aware of with the 1.6 Holden Cruzes. Yeah, another one sorted. Thanks guys.